It's the longest day of the year, June 20th, and a perfect time to ask the question, how hot is too hot to hike Grand Canyon? The predicted high temperature on the rim today is 89 degrees, and the predicted high at Phantom Ranch is 107. The Park Service says you shouldn't hike into the canyon at all, and even on the rim, the Park Service says you should limit outside activities to between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. On a nationwide basis, the National Weather Service issues heat warnings at various temperatures for different parts of the country. In general, a heat advisory is issued for temperatures over 100 degrees for 2 days, and an excessive heat warning is for when temps will be over 105 for the same period. But the numbers vary from region to region. There are some modifying environmental factors at Grand Canyon. The first is a relatively low humidity. I've lived in the West for decades, but when I step off an airplane in a hot and humid place like San Antonio or Bali, I'm always shocked by the feeling of almost walking into a wall of heat and humidity. I find that evaporation has very little cooling effect in high humidity. The West, in contrast, has a dry heat. Sometimes people who move to the West get a front license plate for their car that says dry heat. Maybe because they get tired of explaining to their East Coast friends that the temperatures don't feel as extreme as they sound. And the evaporative effect can lead to very different strategies when the temperature is 100 and the humidity is 3%, as opposed to somewhere with the same temperature but a 90% humidity. When I hike in summer, I like cotton because it retains water and allows an evaporative cooling effect when you hike. At Grand Canyon, that's desirable, whereas in other parts of the country, it is not. The evaporative effect is why the Park Service encourages you to soak your hat and shirt on a hot hike and to hop into the stream if you overheat. But there are two edges to this environmental sword. If you start a hike on the rim of Grand Canyon, you're as much as a mile above sea level, and the atmosphere is thinner. You get as much as a 10% increase in exposure to UV rays for every 1,000 feet of elevation. So on North Rim, you may get 80% more UV exposure than at sea level, and on South Rim, you get 68% more. That's why I'm so crazy about recommending a floppy hat and a handkerchief or bandana for sun exposure at Grand Canyon. There are also multiple strategies that can help in the Grand Canyon heat. Loose-fitting clothes are an important strategy for me. A thin, loose t-shirt combined with oversized running shorts provides lots of airflow. Wool hoodies seem to be favored in the sun by a younger demographic, but I think I get much more airflow with an ultra-thin, loose white handkerchief under my hat, which also protects my neck. This also serves as an evaporative cooler when I soak the hat and handkerchief in water. Starting in the dark also lets you get a jump on the hottest times of day. Shade is your friend on a hot day, but it's hard to come by on South Kaibab and Bright Angel trails. Grand Canyon Hiker Dude has a useful YouTube channel. He provides guide services and also posts an online shade tracker at this website. Using this tool, you can see that in summer, there's almost no shade available on the trails at Grand Canyon. The hottest part of today's hike will be on the Devil's Corkscrew on Bright Angel Trail, and the shade is gone from that section of trail by about 8 a.m. You can see why the Park Service recommends avoiding hiking in the middle of the day. Now, there is some tree shade here on Bright Angel Trail, especially this stretch we're on now, from Havasupai Garden to the top of Devil's Corkscrew. There are lots of trees and bushes. In contrast, there are virtually no trees on South Kaibab Trail, which may be one of the reasons I prefer Bright Angel Trail. Bright Angel Trail also has natural water sources in summer and 3 locations with treated water. South Kaibab has none between the trailhead and Colorado River. The other factor to consider besides the environment is you. Your age, health, experience, and acclimation to heat will affect your choices about a hot weather hike. In years past, I rather enjoyed hiking in hot weather. The hottest hike I ever did in the canyon was when it was 117 degrees or 47 C in the shade at Phantom Ranch. It was hot. My forearms were sweating, something I had never experienced before in my life. But at that time I was a decade younger and in much better shape. At that point, I had a July reservation at Phantom Ranch. I hiked down North Kaibab Trail to get there, and I would not make that same hike at that temperature in my age today. It seems that with age, smaller things throw me off. I used to hike with stomach problems. Nowadays, if I have stomach problems, I postpone the hike. I also find that I'm more affected by weather. In the cold, I shiver sooner, and in the heat, I need more breaks than I needed when I was younger. In winter, that's not too much of a problem. I just put on another layer. But in summer, I'm wearing next to nothing, and there are no more layers to remove. I just need to slow down and take more breaks, and to avoid extremely hot hikes. So I promise to provide you with my number, and for rim to rim hikes, it's 100 degrees. I choose not to do a rim to rim hike when the temperature at Phantom Ranch and the Deep Canyon will be over 100. Whether you go from north to south or south to north, you'll spend several hours in the Deep Canyon, and temperatures over 100 change the hike from being fun into being work. And even worse than that, the heat can be life-threatening. Now, I will hike rim to rim when the Deep Canyon temperatures exceed 100. On Bright Angel Trail, the exposure to the highest temperatures are only on the Devil's Corkscrew, a section of trail that takes 20 or 30 minutes, depending on your speed and where you define its start and end. With an extra liter of water to pour over my head and body, that period of time is bearable to me, and sometimes it's even fun. After that, the trail hits Garden Creek and a shaded stretch up to Havasupai Garden, so conditions get much better. Now, it is true that in summer, Bright Angel Trail is in full sun for much of the day, but as you ascend from Havasupai Garden, temperatures moderate a bit, and if you're lucky, there'll be a breeze which aids in evaporative cooling. There are also occasional rock outcrops that provide patches of shade. Even though South Rim may be hot, it's generally about 20 degrees cooler than the Deep Canyon. And a final point, I always used to think that I preferred a hot weather hike to a cold weather hike. In the cold, you need so much more equipment, and there's always the risk of frostbite if you don't prepare properly. But with age, I've changed my mind. I can always put on another layer to stay warm in the cold, but in the heat, there are no more layers to take off. And there's real risk on a hot hike. People die regularly hiking at Grand Canyon, most often in the hot weather. And my age demographic is the one most likely to have an issue in the heat. Plus, summer hikes are more crowded and room rates are higher. No, I think I've changed my mind and I prefer a cold weather hike to a hot weather hike. But in the end, I remain a four-season hiker at Grand Canyon, and I would not miss this summer solstice hike for a little discomfort in the heat. The thermometer on the backpack went as high as 118 on the way up from Havasupai Garden, but that was in the sun, not in the shade. I imagine in the shade it was probably in the 90s. So with an early start and adaptive strategies, I've been able to complete the hike. So how hot would be too hot for me to hike from rim to rim at Grand Canyon? Well, I haven't hit that temperature yet. With an early start, I'll be out of the Deep Canyon by 9 a.m. and probably not see temperatures over 100, which is a pretty good standard for me. But I'd guess on a rim to rim, my maximum temperature for a hike in the canyon would be 115. Luckily, we didn't see temperatures that high today. In closing, these are my personal standards, and I'm also aware of and accept risks of injury or death in extreme weather. And please recognize the Park Service says you should never hike rim to rim in a day, no matter what the weather. And they say you should stay out of the canyon on days with temperatures like today. And I'm sure they're correct. It's safest to listen to them and their expertise and not to a crazy guy like me. So that's it. For me, how hot is too hot? 100 degrees at Phantom Ranch for a rim to rim hike, and 115 degrees at Phantom Ranch for a rim to river hike if you make an early start. And believe me, the inner canyon reaches both these high temperatures on a regular basis in summer. Happy hiking to you, and thank you for watching. It's the longest day of the year, June 20th, 74 degrees outside. I'd say that's the warmest I've ever seen getting ready to start a hike. The lowest the temperature was this morning was 63 on the way down Bright Angel Trail. First rays of the sun are hitting the south rim, and they are a welcome sight. The Devil's Corkscrew is still in shade. This will be the hottest part of the hike today, and that shade is welcome. It'd be nice if there's shade on the way up. But it's a spectacular morning here at the top of the Devil's Corkscrew on Bright Angel Trail, doing a rim to river hike on the longest day of the year. 6:40 in the morning, 69 degrees. Lovely. "6:45 in the morning on the first day of summer. Sun's angle has changed. Sometimes in winter, the sun doesn't even hit here until 11 a.m. It's already 77 degrees, but we beat the 100-degree heat. Have a quick lunch here and start heading back up to the rim. So far, so good on this hike. Beautiful view of the river. It's 7:50 a.m., 79 degrees. The sun still has not yet hit the Devil's Corkscrew. The sun should start hitting this about 8 a.m., so we've got a few minutes to get up. So instead of recording a video right now, I'm going to hit this and try to get off the Devil's Corkscrew before it's in full sun. Time to get going. Just shy of 8 a.m., 80 degrees, and the sun, as predicted, is starting to hit the Devil's Corkscrew. The sun is both our friend and our enemy. It will be getting pretty darn warm, but hopefully we'll miss that 100-degree mark. We'll see what happens as we go up the trail. In the full sun now, about 85 degrees. Have this cotton handkerchief on, moving through my stages of hot weather hiking. Next stage, of course, is taking the glasses off because they slide off as I sweat, and then pouring water over the hat, handkerchief, and shirt. That's my final stage of cooling on the hot weather hike. So far, we've managed to avoid the worst of the heat. So far, so good. Through the worst part of the sun, there's some division and opinion as to whether the Devil's Corkscrew ends on the zigzags or ends here. Some people call this section the Devil's Backbone, but it is one of the hottest areas on the trail. The backpack temperature has hit 104, probably about 85 in the shade. Maybe that's the worst it'll get to be today. Probably that stretch 4.5 miles from Havasupai Garden to the top will probably equal it, but we'll see. So far, so good. Summer solstice hike. The thermometer on the backpack went as high as 118 on the way up from Havasupai Garden, but that was in the sun, not in the shade. I imagine in the shade it was probably in the 90s. So with an early start and adaptive strategies, I've been able to complete the hike